today we're in mid-July, and we've had 10 inches of rain since the 2nd of July. So we're pretty saturated, but I wanted to show you what the cover crops are looking like. We planted these soybeans on May 24th. We planted them green. The cover crops were 4.5 feet tall, and we planted right into them. And we had the cover crops, and then right next to it we have the no-till control. And as you can see, we got pretty good stands of the soybeans out here, and you can see the remnants of the cover crops. Not only did we have cereal rye, but you can see the remnants of the hairy vetch still there. We planted it green and then sprayed it down to kill the cover crop. We did this 3 days later, so we actually let it sit there. It was somewhat moist at the time, so to take some more of the water up. And what we noticed was, before we got this 10 inches of rain, where we had our cover crops, our soybeans were actually larger, growing faster than where we didn't have them, because I think the cover crops had conserved so much more moisture. So that really benefited the soybeans that way. One of the questions that we've often have is, which is more important, the length of crop rotation or cover crops? So in this study that we're doing here, that's funded by the Missouri Soybean Merchandising Council, is we want to look at different lengths of rotation, from continuous corn, continuous soybeans, to 2-year, 3-year, 4-year, and 5-year, where we actually integrate a perennial crop like red clover or alfalfa, but also on a 3-year and 4 and 5-year, we also have winter wheat in there. But one of the things that we noticed right off the bat this year is, again, where we have a cover crop, this was a cereal rye legume mix, the soybeans are much larger throughout than when we do not have a cover crop. So that was apparent again this year. Again, I think it was because early on we were a little bit dry, and the cover crop kept a lot more moisture into the soil. As a result, the crop grew off a lot quicker. Again, these soybeans were planted green, meaning that the cover crop was still standing, still growing when we planted them, and then we killed them 4 days later before the soybeans came up. So we do see this. Some of it could be some deer damage, because I've noticed the deer do not like the cover crop, being in the cover crop as well as in the non-cover crop. But they haven't been out here for quite a while, so you can still see there is some less growth in the no cover crop as there are in the cover crop. And you can see from the line to the line right here, where we have a cover crop versus no cover crop, the corn is much taller than in the cover crop than in the non-cover crop. So again, early on it conserved that moisture, and the corn grew off a lot quicker. Even though we've gotten 10 inches of rain, I still believe we probably have more moisture in the cover crop than we do the non-cover crop. A lot of this water ran off. That's another thing that we're looking at, rotations. And what we found is that as we extend that rotation, including wheat in our rotation, including a perennial crop like red clover or alfalfa, is that we not only get greater yields of corn and soybean, but we have much better soil health. And in fact, it seems like the cover crop interaction with the longer rotations is much more positive than in just the continuous corn and soybean, or even the corn soybean rotation. So I think we're getting this interaction, a positive interaction between cover crop and length of rotation, not only affecting our environmental services like water infiltration, but that's also leading to greater soybean and corn yields. This is the alfalfa. It's 2-year-old stand of alfalfa. We follow alfalfa after wheat, and we plant it in the springtime. This was planted then in the spring of 2023. So we'll let it grow for 2 years, and then next spring when we plant corn, we'll terminate the alfalfa with herbicides, no-till the corn right into it. And what we've found is that corn does fantastic. It yields 20, 30 more bushel per acre than some of our other rotations. But what's interesting is the echo effect. The next year after corn is soybeans. Those soybeans are much better. Then the 3rd year afterwards is wheat, and that wheat's much better. So we see this beneficial effect from the perennial crop like alfalfa for 3 more years. And what we've noticed and found in our research, again, funded by the Missouri Soybean Association, is that this improves our soil health so much that it lasts for 3 more years. So having this perennial crop in it is a high value crop that you can get benefits in your grain crops also. As part of our study, we also want to have the proper controls. So when we started this study in the fall of 2015, we planted switchgrass, a native warm season grass, and tall fescue. So we can always go back and look at soil health and compare it to what a perennial crop would be. So it kind of gives us a bar to shoot for. And what we found out is that when we do include these perennial crops like alfalfa or even red clover, which sometimes is better than alfalfa, that we get closer to the soil structure that we find in native warm season grasses and native cool season grasses. So having long-term research is critical to have the proper controls. So that's why we put these in. And of course, these are replicated just like the other treatments throughout this field. So in our study that's funded by Missouri Soybean Association, one of our wheat treatments, it's our 4-year rotation of corn, soybean, wheat, then red clover. In the winter, we overseeded red clover into the wheat, the standing wheat. We harvested the wheat on June 19th, and then we're left with this nice stand of red clover. So this fits well into a diversified animal grain crop system. This red clover will grow the rest of this year, and then all of next year. And then after the 4th year of this rotation, we will terminate the red clover and no-till corn right into it. Again, we get this echo effect of the corn yields better, the next year the soybeans do better, and even the 3rd year we see a better wheat yield, again, because we're building soil structure that benefits multiple years afterwards. This is a study that we've been doing for a few years now. We've been working on the solar corridor for quite a number of years, where we plant corn in 60-inch rows versus 30-inch rows, that we have this corridor, as we'll show you here in just a minute. But what we've been doing the last few years, though, is planting a floor crop, a crop in that solar corridor floor that's still short, that still allows the corn leaves to be saturated by sunlight, but we have another crop growing here that can be used as just a cover crop, or if you want to make this into something that where you want to harvest the corn for silage, it gives you a high legume crop here. Or if you want to graze it in the wintertime, there would still be some soybean stubble, soybean residues for them to graze upon. So it gives you some options. But one of the reasons that we're doing this is to improve our soil health. We've got both a grass crop of corn and a legume growing at the same time. So we have the opportunity to improve soil health. What we found, Bob Kramer has found, that worked with us on this project, that when you saturate these lower leaves like we are doing now, the corn, of course, has higher photosynthesis, and then more of the carbon winds up into the rhizosphere, and that feeds the soil microorganisms. So we have actually seen improvement in soil microorganisms in this type of situation. Herbicides, we are a bit more limited on herbicides we can use. There are some that are labeled both corn and soybean for pre-emergent and also post-emergent, so we can control some of the weeds. The hard to control weeds are like morning glories, that we have no good herbicide for both corn and soybean on. But because they're on 30-inch centers throughout the field, we can also cultivate these if we're in a conventional tillage system. So let's look at this is soybean. As you can see, this is Laredo soybeans, which is a forage type. They were planted exactly the same time as the corn. And this is just our solid planted corn on 30-inch rows, just so you get an idea of what's going on. Here's our traditional 60-inch center rows. They're wide rows, as you can see. And the idea, of course, is to saturate those lower leaves to produce most photosynthesis as possible. And we have found out again that we can get most of our corn yield by leaving out part of it, because they'll compensate for that if we have the right hybrid. A corn that has a lot of flexibility in its ear can make up for this. But the nice thing is that you reduce your seed cost by half. And there's other things to consider is nitrogen rate? Can you reduce that? So we're gonna be working on that also. That maybe, even though we may yield at or below what we would in 30-inch rows, our cost of production is a lot lower, and it gives us opportunities then to add a cover crop. So this, about August, we'll oversee the cover crop in this to get that head start on help building soil health. This last flora crop that we're using is sun hemp. Sun hemp is a tropical legume. It'll grow 8 to 10 feet tall. We've used it the last couple of years and got some results from it. Again, if you're looking for silage corn, it's fantastic because it gives you a high protein crop, as well as with the corn silage. So it gives a great alternative to just straight corn silage that you can incorporate a legume into this. And we've done other research at the University of Missouri on sun hemp, and it's shown to be very, very palatable for livestock. At the end, this sun hemp will be taller than the corn. We do see yield decreases because of the competition, whereas in the cowpea and the soybeans, we don't really see much competition effects. So it depends on what your objectives are, whether you want to go with a soybean or something like sun hemp, or leave them open that you can oversee the cover crop later on in the summer. In the solar corridor that Leroy Dykeman originated, he was really more focused on using the most modern hybrid corns possible that had a flex ear system. And it's worked very, very well. We've either equaled or made greater corn yields that way. And we've improved the soil health. But one of the questions that Leroy, Bob Kramer, and I have had is, does the architecture of the corn plant make a difference in this system? For example, a modern corn hybrid, like we see right here, has very upright leaves and are somewhat narrow. This is so you can squeeze the population, the plants in to get greater population, and they have found you get higher yields that way. Whereas if you look at more of our heirloom corn, or early hybrids, or open pollinated corn, we see a much different growth, like we see in this Boone County white, which came out of the 1800s, where we have a very wide leaf, and it's always out, it's more horizontal. Our thought was, would this give us a greater yield boost in the solar corridor system? Because these wider leaves would saturate more light. Now, we do realize there's some limitations. For example, our yields will never equal in these open pollinated as they do in the hybrid corn. However, one of the things that we sacrificed over time was the seed of the corn being lower in crude protein in our modern hybrid. So could we get greater seed protein and do this in more of a livestock situation? So that's what we're looking at here. So we've got our modern hybrids, we've got our heirloom hybrids, we got them growing in 30-inch rows versus 60-inch rows. So let's take a look at some of what they look like in the solar corridor. Right here, it then is the modern hybrid in the solar corridor. As you can see, most of the leaves really don't get into the solar corridor that much. Or open pollinated corn, you can see the leaves are a bit wider. They're into the middle of the row more. So again, it gives a little different look of what's going on out here. And we're also looking at with and without a flora crop of forage soybeans. This way, if we harvest this for forage, we can get the biomass, the energy from the corn and the grain, and also the high protein from the soybean. So we're looking at those. We're also looking at short stature corn. This is a corn from Bayer that's shorter. It has shorter internodes in it. It's only going to get about 6 foot tall compared to 7 or 8 foot tall. And Leroy and Bob and I had that question. Well, they're telling us that they get more root growth this way. Well, then would that affect soil health? Would that affect its response in the solar corridor? So we're including this short stature corn in this study just to see how it responds also. So that's one of the things that we want to do is take this solar corridor and try different things with it. Not only just the modern hybrids, but some of our other hybrids that have special characteristics like the short corn, or going back to some of our more open pollinated corn. We also have an older hybrid out here in this because it's got characteristics of both the modern hybrid as well as the open pollinated corn. A little bit wider leaves, but not as upright as the modern corn. Here's our Reed's Yellow. It's a 1880s open pollinated corn. You see it's got droopy leaves into the center. Right behind it is, this is a modern, this is one of the Pioneers hybrids they sell right now. As you can see, it's totally different structure to it compared to the Reeds. And then right beside it is a very new corn hybrid from Bayer, where we have the very short internodes. So we're looking at different types of corn growth habitat and how it fits into the solar corridor system. Well, one of the questions we had, can we grow a perennial cover crop? Can we, that we don't have to plant every year and terminate every year, and maybe even incorporate this into a diversified system of livestock and grain? So what we did is that we planted 3 different types of a white clover. We had Dutch white clover, Ladino clover, and Kura clover. We planted those last year in 2023, and then we came in this spring and no-tilled corn into it. Now, what the idea is that we could harvest the clover in the spring, we plant the corn, and then a rate of corn herbicide would set the clover back enough that'll allow the corn to establish and grow and yield and make a full yield. But the key is enough herbicide to knock the clover back but not kill it. And that's one of the systems that we're trying to work with now. As we see, we are getting some of the clover to come back. This is a solar corridor system. This is one of the white clovers. It actually looks pretty good. If it looked like this in mid-September with the corn starting to mature, I would be ecstatic. So now, but we're in mid-July, so I'm not quite as happy. I thought we killed the clover there for a while, but it did come back. The other question is then, do we need to come back and then spray right over where we're going to plant the corn and actually kill that clover? Maybe that's what we need to do. So we got to work on that, but this is a first step of utilizing the solar corridor in a perennial system that, again, is used for diversified systems of livestock and grain production. Oh, then the other thing would be that after corn harvest, then the clover is there to be grazed again, along with the corn stubble and any ears of corn that may escape.